Good morning, everyone. As director of the George Washington University Institute for Korean Studies, it's my great pleasure to welcome you here on this lovely morning. My name is Celeste Arrington, and I'm Korea Foundation Associate Professor of Political Science and International Affairs here at GW. I really look forward to today's discussions, and I think with all of our illustrious guests, we'll have a productive dialogue across the two panels today. My colleagues and I established GWICS, as we like to call our Institute for Korean Studies, in 2016 with the aim of promoting Korean studies in the nation's capital. And there could be no better, more fitting way to do so than the Korea Week events that GWICS and the KDI School have been partnering for this year. And so I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you to the GW portion of the Korea Week events today. Our activities this week would not have been possible without the hard work of the GWIC staff, and I want to thank them personally. The Associate Director, Kim Yono, here, as well as our program manager, who's outside, Ravina Ugale, and our program coordinator, Takara Askew, have been coordinating with the excellent team from KDI School and our other cooperating institutions in Korea for many weeks now to make this event possible. So I want to thank them for their hard work. This set of dialogues today is an unprecedented level of cooperation across many institutions. And hopefully this is the start of something that we can continue in the future. Our aim is to have dialogue across a range of different issues with many different perspectives and different stakeholders from both the United States and Korea. And we hope to educate future generations, our students, as well as enrich the policy making processes through our discussions today. So I trust that students, colleagues, and illustrious guests today, you will all see the value in today's dialogue and come back for more, I guess. So let me begin by introducing the first of our three eminent individuals who will give opening remarks. Dean Alyssa Ayers is the Dean of the Elliott School. She has been a stalwart and ardent supporter of Korean studies and GWICS here at the Elliott School. She previously served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia and was also a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. She has published widely about India's foreign policy and Pakistan's cultural history. And she directly helped with some of the logistics for today's events, and I do want to thank her for that. Thank you very much for all your support.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. We're using the mic just to make it easier to hear, but of course it does cause this problem with the screen where you can't hear. I am here to provide opening and welcoming remarks. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being part of the inaugural Korea Week and here with the Elliott School's GWICS portion of Korea Week. I first want to thank our co-hosts. First of all, the KDI School of Public Policy and Management. We could not do what we are doing on public policy and U.S.-Korea relations without our terrific partnership with the KDI School. Since 2019, actually, the KDI School has been our partner, generously providing a grant that supports our policy programs focused on U.S.-Korea relations. And so this has allowed us to really put together, I think what you can all see, are top-notch Korea-focused policy programs. We also are able, as a result, to provide scholarships to GW students who are concentrating on Korean studies, so helping to grow that next generation. I also want to say a special thank you to the National Research Council for Economics, Humanities, and Social Sciences. We appreciate their partnership on today's events and their contributions to the discussions. The Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, they are co-hosting this morning's session on international competition in advanced technologies and U.S.-ROK relations. And the Institute's expertise is really vital in addressing these critical front burner policy issues. We're also thankful to the Korea Institute for National Unification. They are co-hosting this afternoon's session on navigating uncertainties, inter-Korean relations, Russia, North Korea dynamics, and the impact of the 2024 U.S. presidential election. Should be interesting. Those insights will be really essential for understanding these complex dynamics. You're all here to attend this launch of Korea Week, and I think we probably all agree that this is something of a milestone collaboration here. This is the first year that we are collaborating with Korean institutions on this kind of comprehensive dialogue that focuses on security, diplomacy, trade, technology with Korea, and even a special day focused on K-culture. A special word of reminder that will take place tomorrow, so don't miss it. But this really is a unique platform. As you can see from the logos here, it's a partnership between us, the KDI School, as well as the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, which hosted yesterday's day of discussions. And that's a pretty unique platform being anchored in DC by two leading universities in collaboration with Korean institutions. Really focused on facilitating discussions on this whole range of topics with government, private sector, academia, nonprofit sector leaders. So we see this as a new platform, we hope, that will help promote this kind of cross-sectoral dialogue among the United States and Korea. And we hope that this will help with deepening understanding and analysis and inform future conversations about policy and enabling discussions among different stakeholders. I would like to echo Professor Arrington's thanks to the hard work of our GWIC staff, hard work of our GWIC's leadership as well in collaboration with our Korean counterparts. So thank you very much. I know many weeks went into putting this together. Let me just say two words about the panel discussions that we're very, very excited to host today. Today's first session, the morning session on international competition in advanced technologies and U.S.-ROK relations, features key insights from experts including Si-wook Lee, president of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, and other distinguished panelists who will address these critical issues that are right at the intersection of technology and U.S.-ROK relations. In the afternoon, we'll switch topics and focus on navigating uncertainties, inter-Korean relations, Russia-North Korea dynamics, and the 2024 U.S. presidential election. That's going to bring together distinguished experts, including Chun-Sig Kim, who is president of the Korea Institute for National Unification, to explore challenges and opportunities in this region. For each session, we have two keynote speeches that we're just thrilled to be able to bring here to the Elliott School. We're particularly looking forward in the first session to Tarun Chabra's remarks. He's the Senior Director for Technology and National Security at the U.S. National Security Council. And then in the afternoon session, we'll have a keynote speech by Assistant Secretary Dan Crittenbrink, who is the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. So what a wonderful way to bring in government perspective, then dialogue among all of you. A last plug, I mentioned this before, my notes say, please remind everyone, remember to join tomorrow for K-Culture Day. We're going to have a film screening and K-food tastings, which will help round out the policy discussions of the previous 2 days with something fun and cultural for everyone to enjoy. So as my final welcoming remarks, I just want to thank our co-hosts again for your partnership and your contributions in helping to envision and realize this wonderful new platform. And we really eagerly anticipate continuous and deepened exchanges between the US and Korea through the Korea Week platform. And we hope that this will foster greater understanding and collaboration in the years to come. So thank you all for joining today's kickoff and look forward to the discussions.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce our second speaker today. Dean Alyssa Ayers just basically introduced him, but I want to say Yoo Jong-il has been an ardent supporter of GWICs and a great partner for now almost his whole term as Dean of the KDI School. And we're delighted to be able to welcome you back to GW today. He's an economist who's published widely about macroeconomic policy as well as development and income distribution. He's also taught previously at Cambridge, Notre Dame, and Mekong University. He advises the ROK government frequently. So it's my great pleasure to welcome back Yu Jong-il, who has been our key partner on many policy things as well as scholarships, as the Dean previously mentioned. So Dean Yu, thank you.
This big bow is the Korean way. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Dr. Alisa Ayers, Dean of the Elliott School of International Affairs, His Excellency Hyun Dong-cho, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to the United States. Dr. Celeste Arrington was just here, Director of George Washington Institute for Korean Studies. Dr. Siuk Lee, President of the Korea Institute of International Economic Policy. Dr. Chun-sik Kim, President of the Korea Institute for National Unification. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. What a wonderful setting this is. Great pleasure and honor to welcome you to the second day of the Korea Week Conference on Korea-US relations. If you attended the sessions at SAIS yesterday, we are thrilled to have you back. If this is your first day, welcome. We are delighted to have you with us. Since 2019, we at KDA School have been collaborating with our partners from G-Weeks. By now, you should be familiar what it stands for. Before we proceed, I'd like to thank all the staff at G-Weeks for being a great partner of ours over the years, up to co-organizing this conference and their incredible and very successful, I must say, efforts to build a top-notch Korean studies program here at Washington, D.C. Allow me also to express my deepest gratitude to Dean Ayers for unwavering support for our partnership with G-Weeks, including the decision to co-host this conference. And I know she played an instrumental role in bringing Assistant Secretary Daniel Crittenbrink. I recall Professor Ji-soo Kim, the previous director of G-Weeks, told me what a wonderful and incredibly helpful dean she was, and now understand what she meant. She wasn't exaggerating. Yeah. Dean Ayers, I don't know how to thank you. In the intricate tapestry of international relations, the US-Korea alliance stands out as a vibrant thread woven through decades of shared values and commitment. This relationship has evolved from a security-focused cooperation into a robust, multifaceted partnership, which was described as the linchpin for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific in the leaders' joint statement last year, commemorating the 70th anniversary of the alliance. As the world navigates the complexities of the 21st century, this enduring partnership between Korea and the US has played, and I'm sure will continue to play a pivotal role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of the Korean Peninsula and beyond. Let me emphasize that this conference is designed to approach the pressing issues of the day from multiple angles, bringing together a wonderful mix of experts ranging from academics and researchers to practitioners in the government, politics, and the private sector. I believe that a multifaceted policy dialogue like this conference will help deepen mutual understanding and strengthen collaborative efforts between our two countries. To that aim, yesterday at SAIS, we provided a general discussions on the present and future of Korea-US relations and the challenges in establishing a future-oriented trade environment for both countries. Today at the Elliott School, we'll delve into more specific issues: international competition in advanced technologies and Korea-US relations, and inter-Korean relations, Russia-North Korea dynamics, and the impact of the 2024 US presidential election. These are very important and highly sensitive issues. I'm eager to hear what our distinguished speakers will say about these topics, and I'm sure you are as excited as I am to gain better insights into these critical matters. I'm deeply thankful to all the distinguished speakers today, and especially Daniel Crittenbrink, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. And I was going to say Mr. Tarun Chabra, Senior Director for Technology and National Security at the National Security Council, but I was just told that he's not able to come. And oh, he's coming again. So it changes, his assistant was going to, step in for him, but then, okay, this is what happens when you bring in these important people from the government. Yeah. Well, they will have to be extra careful in what they say, given their current extremely important role and position in the government. Their decision to speak at this conference has greatly increased the media attention, which was already considerable even before it, as testified to many reporters sitting here. As we look ahead to the future of the Korea-US relations, we can't emphasize enough the importance of nurturing international-minded youth to which KDI School, Elias School, and SAIS are committed. It is our collective hope that through events like this, we can solidify the groundwork to advance our partnership well into the future when these young students become people like her. Once again, thank you for your being here, everyone. I hope you enjoy and benefit from today's discussions.
Thank you very much, Dean Yu. Next, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce His Excellency Cho Hyun-dong, the South Korean ambassador or Republic of Korea ambassador to the United States. He is a very familiar face, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back to GWIX. He also may be familiar to many of you. He served several tours of duty here in DC, including as Deputy Chief of Mission at the embassy, and he's held many high-level positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So without further ado, and many thanks for your support for GWIX, let me introduce him. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Well, I'm so delighted to join such a distinguished group of experts from both sides, Korea and United States, and to discuss this important topic of how the ROK-US alliance and partnership help us to confront global uncertainty. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Dr. Yu of KDI School of Public Policy and Management and Dr. Ayers, the Dean of the GW Elias School, and the co-host of the event. So I do hope that this wonderful event of Korea Week will be an annual event with my full support. And I also wanted to recognize former ambassadors of Korea to United States, An Ho-young, and to United Nations, Oh Jun. They were my former bosses. Back in Korea, we have saying that once your boss is always my boss. Thank you. Thank you for your presence today. This conference got off to a great start yesterday with your insightful and original discussions on the present and future of the Korea-US relations and our bilateral business exchanges. Of course, I expect nothing less from many Koreans and US experts who took part, many of whom I've known for many years. I think yesterday's discussion confirmed what we have been maintaining for a long time, that even after more than 70 years, the success of the ironclad and unshakable alliance continues. In just the last few years, we have witnessed our alliance strengthened as part of our partnership reoriented in a powerfully positive ways. The future of the Korea-US relationship has never looked stronger. Today's discussion built on the success of yesterday's seminar to define and to expand our partnership to in the midst of international competition in advanced technologies and to navigate uncertainties from persistent security threat from North Korea are the two most challenging yet most critical tasks of our alliance. Many recent events have shaken global norms and challenged what we thought we knew. The global economy is at a critical juncture. We face a number of formidable geopolitical challenges, from ongoing wars in Europe and Middle East and escalating tension in Asia, to global economic volatilities and climate change. We also face a number of challenges related to how best to deal with the new technologies like the rapid growth of AI. But we already know and agree that the best way to respond to these challenges together, working with the allies and partners. And in that, we are fortunate because the ROK-US alliance has reached unprecedented height. President Yoon's 5 separate visits to the United States in just the last 2 years, including the state visit and the recent NATO summit, and the breadth of the outcome of these visits underscores the indispensable nature of our partnership. Our economic cooperation in particular has never been stronger. US is Korea's second largest trading partner. Our bilateral trade volume is more than $200 billion per year, double what it was a decade ago. Over the last decade, US investment in Korea more than doubled, and Korean investment in the United States has exceeded $100 billion in just the last 3.5 years. According to the Reshoring Initiative, the Korean investment is the #1 job creator in the United States, producing over 20,000 new jobs in 2023 alone. Our collaboration spans critical supply issues and emerging technologies. This July, Korea succeeded the United States as chair of the Mineral Security Partnership, which we launched together 2 years ago to better secure and diversify the global supply chain for critical minerals. The ROK-US Critical and Emerging Technology Dialogue, led by the national security advisors from both sides, initiated at the end of last year, is also strengthening our partnership. The AI Seoul Summit in May demonstrated a strong and unified commitment to advancing global cooperation in AI. The Seoul Declaration, which emphasizes safety, innovation, and inclusivity in AI, underscores the dedication to addressing both the opportunities and risk of this technology. Space is yet another emerging field where we cooperate closely. With the recent foundation of our own aerospace administration in May, Korea is ramping up its partnership with the National Space Council. Both initiatives were led for the United States by Vice President Kamala Harris, who attended AI Seoul Summit and joined President Yoon's visit to Goddard Space Flight Center as the chair of the National Space Council. While these are genuine reasons to be concerned about global uncertainties arising from new technologies, but I have faith that the strength of our alliance will guide us through. Our relationship will evolve as it needs to meet any challenges, just as it has over the past 7 decades. And this also holds true when it comes to security cooperation, an area in which our alliance has achieved a remarkable level of collaboration in every detail. The Washington Declaration, our president adopted during the President Yoon's state visit last year, led director to establishment of nuclear consultative group aimed at strengthening ROK-US cooperation on extended deterrence and managing the threat non-proliferation regime by North Korea. The two presidents also issued a joint statement in July on the margin of NATO summit to endorse the tremendous progress the ROK-US alliance has achieved so far the first year of the NCG, as evidenced by the signing of joint guidelines for nuclear deterrence and nuclear operations on the Korean Peninsula. All of this clearly signifies that our alliance has now been upgraded to a nuclear-based alliance. In parallel, the trilateral cooperation framework we established at Camp David last year is crucial to ensuring peace and prosperity in the Pacific. As the three leaders recently reaffirmed in their joint statement to mark the one-year anniversary, I quote, "The spirit of the Trilateral Leaders Summit continues to inspire us, and the principles we established at Camp David serve as a roadmap for our unparalleled cooperation." Unquote. Our latest accomplishment was a memorandum of cooperation on the Trilateral Security Cooperation Framework, which was signed by our three defense ministers this July, further solidifying our trilateral security cooperation. Regarding North Korea, the ROK-US alliance remained in lockstep agreement in our approach. North Korea's provocative behavior continues without any sign of waning. In recent months, they have launched multiple missiles and nonsensically sent thousands of trash-filled balloons across the DMZ. Their nuclear ambitions pose a significant threat to the Korean Peninsula and to global security. They are also now bolstered by a marriage of convenience with the Russians, who, in exchange for ammunition and weapons to use in their invasion in Ukraine, are now expanding military cooperation with North Korea. And we have to take a closer look at what North Korea receives in return for its military assistance to Russia. In the meantime, the Kim regime continues to pour scarce resources into developing its unlawful nuclear and missile program and engaging reckless provocation while ruthlessly oppressing its people to maintain its own power. And the UN Security Council's 1718 Committee, panel of experts, which had served as a gold standard for the implementation of UN sanctions against North Korea for the past 15 years, was disbanded last April by a Russian veto. In close consultation with the United States and like-minded countries, we'll continue to work together with the international community to ensure the full implementation of relevant UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea and bring it back to the path of dialogue. As a part of the effort, we are actively seeking an alternative mechanism for monitoring and reporting violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Finally, a few weeks ago, the President Yoon introduced a new doctrine for unified Korea based on the principles of freedom. The next day, the United States voiced support for our aim to open a path for sustained diplomacy with North Korea. In order to realize this vision and bring positive change to North Korea, a broad and enduring support from our friends and allies will be crucial. Going forward, we must not hesitate to adopt a new thinking and consider fresh approaches to better address challenges we will face in the coming years. Here in Washington, D.C., everyone is closely following the upcoming election. And obviously, I am as well. However, I'm confident that regardless of November's result, ROK-US alliance will remain a strong and robust force based on our shared values and joint vision for peace and prosperity and freedom, representing our best path forward. With that said, I hope today's discussion will help us build on positive trend and provide great insight, further strengthen our alliance. I can't wait to hear your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It is my pleasure now to pass the moderating role to my colleague, Nick Van Ortas, who is Associate Dean for Research Initiatives and a Professor of Economics and International Affairs here at GW's Elliott School for International Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. I am humbled being in this room with all these knowledgeable people who know probably much more than I do on the subject today, although I must say I know a little. Following 3.5 decades visiting Korea back and forth every year, I learned a little on the way, at least. So it's my privilege to introduce a very distinguished roster of speakers here in this session. It's a marathon session, it's like 2.5 hours long session. We will try to do our best. This is important because yesterday's event in our sister school at Johns Hopkins dealt with trade. Today's event, at least this session, deals with the technology behind trade, behind economics and trade. So that's a subject that we know something about, at least in my Institute for Science and Technology Policy here. But also the distinguished speakers will give us the current news. For my understanding, my understanding is that the very close relationship of Korea, South Korea, the Republic of Korea, and the United States in terms of technology and innovation goes far back into the 60s at least. When President Park visited President Johnson here and asked for assistance, because at that point, North Korea seemed to be pretty mighty. If you remember back in history, the Soviet Union went in North Korea and they were providing a lot of support, a lot of technology, a lot of military support, and the southern part felt a little bit uncertain. So President Park visited President Johnson, asked for assistance, and the result of that discussion was the Premier Institute of Korea, KIST. So KIST is a result of that discussion between the two presidents then in the 60s, and the rest is history. So I will try to keep time here, and thus I stop my remarks. This is a little bit complicated session. We will have a prominent person here, Professor Lee Sin-woo, to make some introductory remarks. Then we will go to Mr. Tarun Chambra, from the NSC in the United States. For that part of the discussion, I will ask the recording to stop. So that part of the discussion for half an hour, there will be no recording because Mr. Chambra requested that this is, because of his sensitive position in the government, requested that this will be the case in order for him to answer your questions as best as he can. So Mr. Chambra will not give remarks, but he will be here for half an hour to answer your questions. That is a great thing. I think this is a great start, actually, because you have a person who is extremely interested, knowledgeable on the US side, answering some sensitive questions. And then we will go to a long list of prominent speakers who will give us their opinion. And if you look at the session, the three parts of the presentations, each one has an American and a Korean. So we will have a great debate who sit on these front rows here. So my role will be just to keep time and introduce the speakers. And I start with Professor Lee, Sin-woo Lee. He is the president since last year, I guess, 2023. He is the president of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. I don't know all this I know KEEP. I know KEEP, but I don't know all these expanded names, right? So Professor Lee is a distinguished expert of the topic we're discussing today. Before joining the KEEP, he was a professor at KTI actually, for about a decade. He knows also, he is very knowledgeable of the United States because he has received his doctorate from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And he's also knowledgeable of Europe because he got a master's from University of Paris 9 in France, and he has a BA from Yonsei University in Korea, in Seoul. So without further ado, I would welcome Professor Lee to the podium.
Distinguished guest, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to take a part in this wonderful assembly on the second day of U.S.-Korea policy talk. I do like to express my special gratitude to Korea Week organizers for providing us with this invaluable platform to discuss and enhance the vital cooperation between our two countries. In today's opening remarks, because still time management, so I'm gonna be short. So I would like to briefly address the current state of Korea-US cooperation in advanced technology from both public and the private sector perspectives. In May 2022, President Biden visited Korea, and a year later, the President Yoon made a state visit to the United States. So in these two bilateral summits, the US and Korea consistently committed to strengthen their partnership through joint R&D and expert exchanges in the areas of advanced technologies, including semiconductor, batteries, biotechnology, and quantum information science. The comments made during the summit meetings are now actively being implemented. So with the establishment of a U.S.ROK, new generation critical and emerging technology dialogue, the talent actually actively involved there, two nations are exploring various cooperation measures in advanced technology field. In the case of research cooperation, for instance, Korea's Ministry of Science and ITC and the U.S. National Science Foundation have agreed to expand the joint research support in the semiconductor and the biotechnology industries. Specifically, in case of biotechnology, more than $10 billion is expected to provide. On the top of that, cooperation between public institutions is expected to continue. The Advanced Semiconductor Technology Center being established in Korea is actually corresponded to the U.S. National Semiconductor Technology Center, which was established after the passage of CHIPS and Science Act. The critical and the emerging technology dialogues outline the promotion of cooperation between these two institutions, and we expect that ongoing exchanges in public semiconductor infrastructure that will drive next generation innovation. Cooperation on batteries and green energy sectors will be soon strengthened through joint research, and the two nations also plan to cooperate on the responsible use and standardization of future technologies. Building on such the government level cooperation, various private sector collaboration are taking place as well. And such private sector cooperation sometimes leads to the commercialization of a groundbreaking technology that shake the world. So let's take the example of Apple's very first iPhone released in 2007. When you think of CPUs, we usually think about Intel or AMD, but actually the CPU in Apple's first iPhone was supplied by Samsung Electronics, which helped usher in the era of smartphones. Even though Apple later developed its own chips, Samsung Electronics had been an exclusive manufacturer of Apple's system on chip until the release of the iPhone 6. This was a result of the private sector cooperation between United States and Korea that allows breakthrough ideas to become a reality. Let's take another example. About 10 years ago, AMD, one of the America's leading semiconductor companies, wanted to introduce innovative stacked memory technology to fully maximize the computing power of processors. But as you know, as a company that designs processor, but does not actually make a memory, AMD cannot go it alone. Unfortunately, many partners, actually AMD asked, that were reluctant to take the risk. At that time, Korea's SK hynix extended its hand, which led to the development of a first generation of a high bandwidth memory, HBM, in the 2014, a key technology that helped realize the current AI boom. So powerful computing power is essential to the use of AI technology, and HBM memory, a symbol of U.S.-Korea Advanced Technology Cooperation, is behind this wave. Even today, numerous joint ventures between Korea battery manufacturers and the U.S. automotive companies are underway to facilitate America's transition to a greener future. The United States is expected to be one of the countries with the largest battery manufacturing capacity by 2030. Behind this, Korea's three major battery companies play a critical role. So if you combine the investment plans in United States of LG Energy Solution, Samsung SDI, and SK On, Korean companies are actually expected to account for more than 60% of the total US battery manufacturing capacity. So these examples of cooperation in the past and today embody the fundamental principles of maximizing US-Korea cooperation, which is quote unquote complementarity. In the private sector, Korea's manufacturing capacities support US innovation and the transition to the greener future. While not every cooperative project has been successful, US-Korea cooperation has played the role of a midwife in birthing the next generation of advanced technology through the bold challenges. So moreover, expanding US-Korea cooperation at the government level, where the two complementary countries conduct joint R&D projects and jointly establish next generation standards, serve as a catalyst for subsequent private sector cooperation. So through our discussion today, I hope that we can reaffirm the importance of US-Korea cooperation in science, technology, and supply chains, identify new opportunities for cooperation, and reflect on the security implication of this dual-use technology. To save time, I'm going to stop here, and thank you very much.
And we are going to continue with another very distinguished guest, Tarun Chambra. He was very kind to finally visit our school and answer questions from the audience and from me. Actually, we have some questions already in front of us. But there will be also a chance for you to ask him questions. Tarun Chambra is currently a special assistant to the President of the United States and Senior Director for Technology and National Security on the National Security Council. From 2015 to 2017, he served as the NSC Director of Strategic Planning and of Human Rights and National Security Issues. He's educated, he has a long list, a bio, you have it in front of you, but he's educated at Stanford for undergraduate and Oxford University in the UK for an MPhil, and he has a JD from Harvard Law School. So, Mr. Chambra, The floor is yours. As I said before, this session will not be recorded. It's off record. I will call on the podium Dr. Song Chi-ung. He is a professional friend of mine from old times. He was a visitor actually here in the Institute for International Science and Technology Policy exactly 10 years ago. Dr. Song has had an illustrious career for a couple of years, 3 years. He was the vice president of STEPI. This is one of the most well-known Korean institutes, the Science and Technology Policy Institute of Korea. Dr. Song has led various teams, various projects in that institute, and he is quite well known. He has become quite well known internationally. So without further ado, I will ask him to come to the podium, and then we will follow with Dr. Atkins. Okay, as a speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Borotas, for introducing me very nicely. And I'm very, actually, it's good to see you again. And I'm very happy that you look great. And also, I'm very happy to be here as a speaker, talking about this very important topics, especially at this GW, my alma mater. And I was in this building 10 years ago, as Professor Molotoff mentioned. Let me start my presentation with briefly touching the major timeline and the event first. In public's memory, I guess that it was former President Donald Trump who sparked the tension or the hegemony race with China in 2018. But actually, in my opinion, it was China. In 2015, the Chinese Communist Party announced a very ambitious plan, the plan of becoming the single giant superpower in manufacturing sector globally in 2015 by beating out Korea, Germany, Japan, and US. And at the time, the China focuses on the semiconductor because this is the critical kind of technology as well as critical kind of factor that the China can be the single superpower in the manufacturing sector globally. After that, the very famous trade sanction was imposed by the then President Trump. And in the Pacific Strategy Report 2019 was published by the Department of Defense, US. And then in 2022, the US government launched the CHIPS and Science Act. It's a very important timeline. And in 2020, the Melissa Flag, the researcher CSET, the Center for Security and Emerging Technology at Georgetown University, she proposed that U.S. government need to form some kind of R&D alliance with 6 distinguished countries, such as India, Japan, France, Germany, UK, and South Korea. Then why? Because including US, the 7 countries have some sort of a capability financially to cover up the R&D spending in the most 50% of globally. It means that the 7 countries can dominate some sort of a technological development, the race compared to China. That's why she proposed this kind of very the challenging in the suggestions. Yes, after that, technology hegemony race between China and US actually has changed the relationship between the US and ROK quite dramatically, and it opened new opportunity to Korea, in my opinion. Yes, this is the U.S.-ROK Leaders Summit 2022, and this slide is written in Korean. And someday I hope that you can read and you can understand in order to promote the bilateral relationship between Korea and the US. But don't worry, I will talk about the main statement here. Yes, the critical and emerging technologies, this kind of terminology and very important kind of a cooperation platform emerged in 2022. And then Korea became the official member of Artemis program in 2002 as the follow-up this Leaders Summit in 2022. And after that, yes, I think this is the most important kind of a outcomes that the Korean global conglomerates, they decide to invest, to make a very huge investment in US, like Samsung Electronics, SK Hynix, and the Hyundai Motor Group, LG Energy Solution, and Lotte Chemical. Yes, another kind of here the Korean written, but anyway, it's a $17 billion, $52 billion, 70.9 billion US dollar, 14 US billion dollars. So a lot of huge amount of investment was planned by the Korean global conglomerate as the follow-ups of 2022 Leaders Summit between US and Korea. And this is a simple map that the Samsung, SK, yes, is the semiconductor companies. They started building up the facilities and the manufacturing infrastructure in US. This is a major kind of a footprint, I think. In 2023, another U.S.ROK Leaders Summit was held in Washington, D.C. And it's a nice picture we can here. Okay, what was discussed between two leaders in 2023, and we can find out from the joint statement 2023. And nuclear energy R&D cooperation and some sort of a CET dialogue is a very important one, and also new educational exchange initiatives. And those four kind of categories are very important in our opinion. As our the Professor Lee Xiong mentioned that nowadays many kind of sectoral and the thematic cooperation in the field of R&D and in the technological development nowadays on the way between US and Korea. But still, we feel some sort of a thirsty that we may need to have a big picture or flagship program between US and Korea in terms of R&D cooperation and alliance. So actually, last year, STEPI team proposed some sort of launching chorus, as Korea and the US, kind of a horizon program or framework program that can be extended to the level of Indo-Pacific. That means that yesterday morning, actually, our distinguished panelists discussed that US need to increase the investment on the technology, critical technology, and also R&D. Then to where and for what? And I think flagship program between the US and ROK in terms of R&D collaboration, maybe I think I need to urge that US may need to invest some kind of funding to the bilateral cooperation in the R&D. Then maybe we can have some sort of a umbrella kind of a scheme that cover every kind of sectoral and thematic cooperation between two countries nowadays. Now, I'm going to talk about more specifically what's going on between two countries in the field of critical and emerging technology cooperation. I have to start with the CET dialogue first. I think this is a kind of a major kind of a scheme or platform that US try to improve the technological cooperation with major partner countries like Singapore, India, Korea. And we have US, Korea, and critical dialogue at first, and it is extended to US, Korea, and India CET dialogue at this moment. And I think this is very important because India becomes one of the major the superpower nowadays. But Korea actually, we do not have many kind of interaction with India. So India is kind of a new partner to Korea, and we do not know much about India. But if we can utilize this trilateral cooperation scheme, then I think Korea can improve and strengthen the relationship between the USA at the same time with India. And this is topics that was discussed in the various types of a CET dialogue. As we can see, AI, biotechnology, the defense, quantum, and the semiconductors. And I'd like to emphasize that US, ROK, and India, that those three countries discuss about semiconductor. And nowadays, actually, India wants to participate in the global supply chain of semiconductor, but I'm not so sure it's feasible or not. But who knows? From 10 years now, we can see that India is producing some sort of a legacy chips. They focused on the low level of kind of a semiconductor, who knows? So we have to focus on this one. Second one, I have to talk about the MIRI initiative. I think it was a National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. In this final report, NSCAI proposed to establish the MIRI, the Multilateral AI Research Institute, in order to promote the capability of the US in terms of AI. Here, Stanford University Human-Centered AI in 2022, this report suggested that Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, New Zealand, UK, and South Korea needs to be the founding member state in MIRI. And also, National Artificial Intelligence Advisory Committee in 2023 also some sort of confirms that Korea can be the founding members of this MIRI. And as you know, the China is now becomes the superpower in terms of artificial intelligence, and the US has another kind of big superpower. The alliance is very important, and Korea can be a good partners in terms of the AI. And this is what was happening in the business sector between Korea and the US. Many kind of AI deals completed between the US entity and the Korean entity. We can see Neighbor, NCSoft, LG Electronics, KT, SK Telecom, and Friosa. And actually, Neighbor and NCSoft is a kind of a new kind of a powerhouse in Korean economy nowadays, mainly focused on the digital kind of the business. So I think there are a lot more kind of AI deals between US and ROK nowadays. It means that Korea started doing the role of very important kind of a counterpart to US in the business sector. And why Korea? Why in the MIRI initiative, the US kind of the government and the universities think tank that suggested that Korea should be the founding members of this MIRI? Yes, it's because of semiconductor. The Chief Alliance is very well known. South Korea was included in the Chief Alliance because Korea is a home to Samsung, a giant in semiconductor manufacturing, especially the memory chips. And this year, the US government, federal government decided to provide the subsidy to Samsung Electronics. The amount is then more than $6 billion US. Yes. Anyway, and also at the time, this is my focus here. Leo Brainerd, the White House economic advisor, said that Samsung had also made a series of commitment to enable it to manufacture chips directly for the defense department. It means that Samsung can be some sort of a can participate in the supply chain of the defense in USA. It means that Samsung may need to operate the US manufacturing facilities or US branch quite separately and independently with the home kind of a home branch and also the branch located in the China in order to keep the security, I think. So it will give some another kind of a challenge to Samsung. Yes, U.S.-ROK Mutual Defense Treaty and Combined Forces Command is another kind of very important kind of platform for the reciprocal defense agreement. It was going on, but kind of a setback due to U.S. GA audit. And also, yes, in the defense, the next time, maybe U.S. and ROK can do some sort of MRO cooperation, means that maintenance, repair, and operation. Actually, there are in Okinawa, the U.S. base, a lot of battleships and the cruiser and many things, and also firefighters over there. Now, how those kind of U.S. troops can get the technological service in terms of MRO? Then Korea can be a very good partner for that because we have very good manufacturing companies. For example, the Korea Airlines is providing the aviation MRO to U.S. F-16 fighting Falcons many times. So U.S. and Korea next step after the semiconductor, it can be the MRO cooperation in defense. And also the next stage, maybe Korean heavy industry companies can participate in the cooperation with the US. And I remember that the last time US talking with the Australia, the AUKUS, and the US realized that we need to have some sort of a capability of building a lot of battleships, the shipbuilding industry we need. And Korea has one of the best shipbuilding industry in the world. The Samsung Heavy Industries, HD Heavy Industries, and Hana Ocean. So can be a good partner for the defense, for the Navy. And who knows, 10 years later, the US federal government will provide some subsidy to Samsung Heavy Industries and other Samsung companies. This is going to be another kind of a good cooperation topic for both countries. And next is quantum. Yes, Korea-US Quantum Technology Cooperation Center, open. It was located at Vienna, I think. And space, Artemis, and also SMR, and the nuclear fusion would be the next kind of topic for the as a very good cooperation topic for both countries. And next, finally, it may be cybersecurity is very important one. So the cybersecurity is a worldwide event. So one single country cannot deal with and address every kind of problem. So cooperation between US and Korea is very crucial in my opinion. In addition, finally, KITA, Korea International Trade Association, Washington Center, actually they proposed some sort of partner with the Korea Act in 2022, means that provide the some Korean professionals who is going to work at the manufacturing the site in US, provide some kind of special visa, IFO, like a Australian specialty visa, E3, and actually. Yes, it was proposed, and the senators and the representative, like Senator Mazi, I don't know, and also Representative Gerald Connolly, they proposed this kind of act, but yes, not that kind of noticed at this moment. So I think this is another area we can do together. And also it will promote the educational exchange program at the same time. You'll see very excellent Korean engineers and technicians can come to the USA. And this is the final kind of slide I prepare. Let me conclude my presentation by saying some kind of a metaphor. In 2022, in the NFL draft, the National Football League, the San Francisco 49ers drafted a young quarterback, the name of Brock Purdy, with 262nd picks. Usually 250 players selected in annual draft. So 262 is very unique and unusual. So he was called as Mr. Irrelevant. From 1945 to 1950, Korea might be the irrelevant country to US because not the critical factor in the big picture after the World War the second in the position of the US. And Brock Purdy, soon after, he became the starting quarterback in the middle of the season. And the last year, he led to the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl. No, nobody called him as Mr. Irrelevant. He is the most relevant player in San Francisco, right? The Korea became the relevant country after the Korean War on the basis of a defense treaty between two countries. And nowadays, Korea is more relevant country, much more relevant counterpart, because we are gathered together here today, talk about the relationship between two countries. And if we can promote and we can strengthen the technological partnership and joint R&D activities together, then maybe 10 years later, I hope, and I can guess that Korea will be the most relevant country counterpart to US, like Brock Purdy and San Francisco 49ers, who can be the next legacy after the Tom Brady, who the GOAT of the NFL. And that's my hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We will continue with Rob Atkinson. Rob Atkinson is one of those most well-known policy advisors in this city. He is the founding president of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, or ITIF, as all of us know it. He's a prolific writer, and his latest book, which I have not seen yet, I guess I will get a copy at some point, is Technology Fears and Scapegoats, 40 myths about privacy, jobs, AI, and today's innovation economy. Sounds excellent, fantastic. So without further ado, Rob, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, Nick, first of all, very disappointed. You have not read the book. Actually, I don't care if you read the book. You just buy it. You got your phone?
I'll buy it.
Amazon.com.
I'll buy it.
All right. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. For a few people who saw me yesterday, you can just pull out your phones and I'll wake you up when I finish, as I may repeat a little bit of what I said yesterday. So I thought Dr. Sung did a fantastic job. and so I could finish my remarks by saying, yes, I agree, and more of it. That's pretty much what I have to say. Of course, we should be doing these technology partnerships. We need to be doing more of them. We need to be making them deeper. And most importantly, we need to shift from talk to action and begin to really operationalize these kinds of things. But I'm not going to focus too much on that because I want to focus on, I think, putting that all in context a little bit. Like why are we doing this? We weren't doing it 5 years ago. Why are we doing it now? And you know, Dr. Sung put up his initial chart with the tech war, and I was like, oh man, I hope he doesn't say that the U.S. is engaged, sort of had responsibility for this, and thankfully you didn't. The Europeans will say that. They'll say, we caused the tech war. That'd be like saying we caused World War II because we shot down a couple of Japanese planes in Pearl Harbor. China started this war, and let nobody ever forget that. China started the war, and they see this as a war. You know, I don't know how many of you are economists. Nick, you're sort of an economist. That's a compliment, by the way.
I lost nothing.
But you know, we're all trained in one way or another on Ricardian trade theory. Trade is automatically win-win because it's two mutually consenting adults that are making something that is a utility maximizer for both sides. And therefore, whatever China's doing in this space must be win-win. China is not a Ricardian. If anything, they're in trade theory, they're a Listian. They're a Friedrich List, which is about trade as power. And I wrote a long series of 3 articles a couple of years ago in a journal called International Economy Journal, really looking at Albert Hirschman's first book, which was his best book, actually. Albert Hirschman's a great economist, but I think his best book was 1945, and it was basically all about national power and trade. And his case example was Germany. So he looked at Germany, not just under the Nazis, but from basically late 1800s, or beginning 1900s, through the Nazi regime, and said what Germany is wanting to do on trade, they're not protectionists, they're not UK English free traders, they're using trade to gain power. And when you go through that, it's fascinating. And when you actually look at some of the articles from the French experts and scholars and newspapers and the British at the time, they were basically saying the same thing we're saying now about China. They were saying it about Germany. Stole our intellectual property, massively subsidized their exports, kept certain imports out, tried to get other countries dependent upon them. And that's what China's doing. And I don't think we should, I think we sort of really want to go back to that world where things were good. You know, when we all read Francis Fukuyama's book, we're like, oh, this is fantastic. We're at the end of history. It's going to be great. We're not. And let me read you one quote by Xi in 2016. He said, a historical experience shows that these technological revolutions profoundly change global development patterns. Some states seize this rare opportunity, others do not. Those who recognize the revolution before them and actively take advantage of it rapidly increase their economic strength, scientific and technological strength, and defense capabilities, thereby quickly enhancing their composite national strength. I didn't hear anything in there about comparative advantage, about free trade, about letting the market determine what China's going to specialize in. What I heard there, which is just power. And what kind of power? He's not talking about power by dominating the global soybean market. He's talking about power by dominating the most advanced industries in the world. And why does he want to do that? Why are we talking about, you know, emerging and foundational technologies? Well, for several reasons. One, high levels of dependency. So the U.S., and you saw there with, you know, Charan mentioned this a little bit, we're still living in this, I would argue, this fantasy world in the U.S., where a long time ago, we had control, we had power. We could cut anybody off anytime for any reason because we had such power around technology. And we would use that power, and we don't anymore. So we were talking about export controls. I don't know what good export controls are anymore, with exception of a few very narrow things, because China has the capabilities of doing most of what we want them not to do. And if they don't have those capabilities, they're going to get it from somebody else. So one of the things that China wants to do is number one, we want to be completely independent of any power or pressure we can put on them, any. And there was a really good article recently that looked at the dependency ratio that a professor at Tsinghua University did. He did a study which was immediately suppressed by the CCP. But what it showed was that the Chinese, if we were in a complete war, techno-economic war, and we're just cutting each other off, they still lose more than we lose. You know, we still have an edge on them. We could inflict more pain on them than they could inflict on us. That's not going to be true in a few more years. It's going to, every year that goes by, that tilts the other way. And that's what Xi Jinping wants to do. Xi Jinping wants that to be not 45-55, but 90-10. So that's number one. Number two, and you've seen this in both what he says and the whole focus on civil military fusion. Advanced weapon systems have always been related to cutting edge technology. So one of the reasons we developed the steel industry we developed was because of actually naval contracts back in the 1880s and 1890s, and naval R&D. You basically look at any kind of revolution in military affairs, and it's underpinned by advanced technology. So the Chinese know that, and they know that if they can advance that while at the same time weaken our capabilities, they're not just globally strong by having all these technologies, they're militarily strong as well. And, you know, I won't, everybody knows this now, but for you know, some general recently, or somebody studied, you know, the Chinese have, what, 100, for every 100 ships they can make, we can make 3. That doesn't bode very well, which is why we're doing a partnership with Korea on this. So that's number one. What does China want? China doesn't just want to gain, okay? They want to put the other guy or gal out of business. So that's really an important key point there. People talk about decoupling, de-risking. I would think a better term is destruction, because that's what they want to do. So think about telecom equipment. In 1999, the United States was dominant in telecom equipment. We had obviously Lucent. We also had Nortel, which was a Canadian company, but the vast majority of Nortel assets were in the United States. And within 8 years, we went from dominance to 0. And why did we do that? Well, we did that for a number of different reasons. I wrote a long article a few years ago called Who Lost Lucent? But we did that for one reason, was because of predatory actions by Huawei. So when dumping, price gouging, IP theft, you know, it was interesting. A few years ago, Huawei engineers, if you heard that story, they were out in Washington, D.C. at the T-Mobile R&D or testing facility. And T-Mo had a little thing called Tappy, and it was just this artificial finger that tapped phones. See how long you can tap the phone before it goes out of business. So these Huawei engineers are in there. You can't make this stuff up. It's like right out of The Onion. They steal the finger, stick it in their pocket, walk out. Little did they know there was a camera. So they get caught. Turns out later on that Huawei, the annual bonus you would get, if you stole technology, your bonus went up. I don't think Samsung has that system, or Intel. So anyway, that's why we lost. That's a big reason why we don't have telecom equipment anymore, because of predatory actions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, take that story and then apply that across the board. That's where they want to go. So you look at electric vehicles. I was listening to one of the experts on that from the Center for Automotive Research, and he said that every year there are essentially on average 3 major vehicle cargo ships that are built every year. And these are ships that take Hyundai automobiles and take them out to the port of LA or whatever that might be. 3. The Chinese are building 30 a year now. So absent any kind of protection, we basically are looking at a world where they would, you know, probably destroy 1 or 2 American car companies. We probably have 1 left. And then just take that down the list. So we've been working on basically a 2-year study for a foundation, the Smith Richardson Foundation, looking at how innovative Chinese companies actually are. Not foreign companies in China, but Chinese companies in a set of different industries: machine tools, robotics, quantum computing, which comes out on Monday, AI that just came out, semiconductors, automobiles, chemicals, et cetera. And what we found in that study was very striking. One is if I had to sort of put it in historical terms, I would say China is where Korea was in 2000. So Korea, obviously, in its innovation capabilities to be close to the global frontier, has now achieved that in many sectors, is at the global frontier. But in 2000, Korea was not at the global frontier. I think China is around where Korea was in 2000. And then you listen to the debate in the US and they'll say, well, they're not going to be able to do that. Well, how did Korea do it? I don't understand. What happened here? How did Korea do it? And Korea did it without most of the bad things. Korea did it by investing in engineering, getting really good skills, investing a lot of government R&D. Well, China's doing that, like way more. And on top of that, they have a closed market. On top of that, they have a massive intellectual property theft racket going on. On top of that, they're manipulating global standards. And you go down the line. I'll give you a good example, which is why, which I think is some areas I'll talk about and why we need cooperation. The U.S. has no display industry by and large. And we don't. That's not built by an American company. It's probably built by LG or Samsung, or hopefully not Chinese. You guys wouldn't have you don't have a BOE or Hisense. All right. So, Korea, Taiwan, and Japan used to be dominant in the LCD market. That's where they were really good at. China is now dominant in LCD. It's not even close. They're just dominant. They've taken over the LCD. And so in that sort of famous Clay Christensen notion, what do? Well, you move up the value chain. And that's what LG and Samsung are doing and going into OLED, which is harder to do, higher quality, more expensive. There's only one problem. China is chasing them so fast in OLED. China, BOE, one of their display makers, recently built a factory. Probably one of the most modern OLED display factories in the world, at least in terms of process automated robotic technology. In the CHIPS Act, which we talked about, Samsung, Intel, all these companies, they get probably anywhere from 30 to 35% of their CapEx subsidized by the government. So, that's good, better than paying 100%. They get about 30%, 35% from the government. The BOE factory got 88% of its total CapEx factory, like billions of dollars, 88% paid for by the government. How is Samsung supposed to compete with that? Just tell me, how do you compete with that? And the only way you can compete with that is on quality. Well, this piece of this Chinese thing, it's $1,000 less, but it's not very good. Yeah, you can do that for a while, but the problem is that China keeps going up. And if they get close enough, which they probably are now, if they get close enough, you go into Best Buy, a local appliance store, and I got an LG OLED, or I don't know how much OLEDs cost. I haven't looked, but let's just say $1,400. And I got a Hisense or BOE for $800. What do you think most people are going to do? And then eventually what happens is the production of LG TVs or Samsung goes down. They're unable to keep reinvesting in the next generation of display technology. They start to stumble a little bit, and eventually they go out of business. So I'm not predicting anything. If I was good at predicting, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be investing in the stock market. I invest in the stock market with an index fund. That's how good I am at predicting. But I am saying that that's the thing we should be thinking about. So what does it mean? Well, I think a couple of things. One is, if you look at the overlap in areas that China is going after and the techno-industrial structure of both of our countries, you are in a worse position than we are. The areas China's going after are core Korean strengths: semiconductors, automobiles, chemicals, already steel, shipbuilding, of course, robotics. So we're going to be in the crosshairs, no question about it. But we have a little bit of more diversification. They can't do IT very well. They're not really good at it. They don't do systems integration the way we do. So I think it's something that we need to both carefully look at. And then to close, I would say, ultimately, I think the way we're going to have to be able to, not lose the war. I wish I would be optimistic and say we could win the war. I don't think we can win the war. I think we can not lose the war. And we have the summary of all this work is coming out in a couple of weeks on an event with the China Select Committee is hosting. I think we've got to do two things. We have to ramp up our own efforts, and I won't speak for Korea, but domestically we have to do that. I mean, I see it so bad for Tarun because he's fighting the good fight. But when you got a Congress that wants to cut science spending, when you got a Congress that won't fund the Science Act, when you have a Congress that won't increase the R&D tax credit, which is now 32nd out of 34 countries in the world, when you have all this talk about manufacturing, but we won't expand our manufacturing USA centers, these public-private cooperative centers. It's like, are we really serious about that? And the answer is no, we're not really serious. I don't believe the US is serious. If we were serious, we would be doing what we did in 1950 when North Korea invaded South Korea, which would be say, oh man, we gotta really ramp up. If you look at what the US did in 1950, and our R&D spending was minimal in 1950, our defense spending was minimal. And then Stalin gave the green light. You get invaded, and we're like, oh man, we better do something. And within 10 years, we completely turned that around. We created DARPA. By the end of 1959, by 1960, the US government was funding more R&D than every other country in the world, business and government combined. So we went from to 100 miles an hour in 10 years. And the only reason we did it was because we saw the Soviet threat for what it was. And we still fundamentally don't see the China threat for what it is. If you just sort of, look at what's coming out of Washington think tanks and Council on Foreign Relations and Foreign Policy Magazine, all that, look at an article on China. And with the exception of one by a Princeton professor who's great, Aaron Friedberg, yeah, great piece. I really recommend it. It was the last issue of Foreign Affairs or Foreign Policy, whatever it was. Great piece. But all the rest of them are, peak China. China's not going to do anything. They can't do anything. So the US really fundamentally is still in denial. And until we overcome that, so that's number one. We got to really, really put the pedal to the metal. But number two, you can't win this war by just doing sort of offense. You have to do defense. And that's where I would say, for example, if I were the king, I would say that the US should work with Japan and China, although I think Europe seems hopeless, but, and we would basically say, hey, China, you cannot export your displays to the US because those displays are being made through completely unfair trade violative practices, including stealing IP from Samsung. So fine, we're just going to block you. And I think if we don't do that, if we don't keep their global market share limited, they're going to get such amazing amounts of revenue to keep reinvesting into the next generation. So I'll just stop there. I think, again, we got to do two things. At least for the US, we got to expand more and do that in collaboration with our core allies. I put Korea, Taiwan, Japan on that list, and the Commonwealth countries. I don't put Europe on that list. I don't think Europe has made up its mind what it wants to do. We've got to do that, and we've got to do this other kind of collaboration. And one last point. I think that if we're going to do that, it's incumbent upon both sides, but in particular Korea, I would argue, to avoid irritants, particularly if President Trump is reelected. President Trump is more sensitive to foreign irritants than I think other administrations are. And for example, I would argue there are certain practices in Korea right now. For example, the DMA, Korea wants to put in place a Digital Markets Act based on what the Europeans are doing. The Europe law is terrible, unneeded, harmful. But definitely targeted at the US, there's no question about that. And the perception is are these bills in Korea targeted at US companies because of whatever reasons? And I think if that's the case, then that's problematic. So again, limit those sort of irritants, work together. Completely agree with Dr. Sung. All of those great projects, let's keep doing them. Let's do more. Let's do them better. Let's start implementing them. So thank you.
As always, Rob has ideas that provoke discussion. One thing, Rob, that goes in your direction, actually, from mainstream economics, since you said, is that the Chinese structure of their economy is completely unsound. It's not sound at all. And their consumption, the share of GDP on consumption is too small. The share on investment, capital investment is too large. A lot of it now is being wasted. And they just have a problem changing this. And if they have a problem changing this, means they are dependent on the rest of the world. The rest of the world has to take their products, dumped or not, they have, in order for China to keep working. The moment that stops, China is actually falling. And the reason is very simple. Any economist will tell you the structure of the economy is really wrong at this point. It totally depends. They are totally dependent on export, totally. So I want to continue with two more speakers. The next couple of speakers. First, I will call Dr. Kim Hyuk Jung. Dr. Kim is Associate Research Fellow at KIP, Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Dr. Kim, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for having me here today. My name is Hyuk-jung Kim from Kiev, and I'm mainly studying US and Canadian economies. Today, I want to show our significance, the significance of Korea in the United States. So let me start with this big wave of semiconductor incentives around the world. Evidently, China started this wave by introducing their big funds for the semiconductor industry. And then after the US, our big brother, introduced the Chips and Science Act, almost all other countries doing semiconductor businesses are introducing their own industrial policy. Korea is used to be known as a country with a very large industrial policies, but actually it's not true. Our direct subsidies that we give to the semiconductor industry, less than about $3 billion. If I try to calculate and add up 4 different types of subsidies that we can give, we don't really give large amount of subsidies to our firms. And also our tax credit is only about 15%. But when you compare with US give 25% out of the total investment, which is really large. We give about 15% to our largest firms, and it's also like a non-refundable tax credit. So there are many limitations in our tax incentives. And then this really caused us to make some productions overseas. I just want to say one thing in this slide. Our past was in China. Our future is now in the US. So historically, Samsung and SK Hynix had their operations in China, both making DRAM, NAND, and packaging services in China. And then now our biggest amount of investments are made in the United States. Both SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics is going to produce products that is very important to the US economic security. And the figure down below is about the outward investment in the semiconductor industry. This red line represents China. The blue line represents the US. So we can clearly see that after introducing Chips and Science Act and the Semiconductor Export Control, we have this blue line US line is surpassing that of China. So the future is really in the US. This is not the end. There are other types of incentives that the government gives. We have Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, which is mainly about public investments to improve the infrastructure and the clean energy transition of the US. And we have Inflation Reduction Act, mainly to promote private investments by giving generous tax incentives. And as a result, there are many investments that is occurring now in the US. These blue circles are representing the investments excluding Korea. The red circles are representing Korean investments to the US. I don't need to explain that how many investments are made in the US by Korean firms. It's really significant in all of these semiconductor, battery, EV, biomanufacturing, which is really critical in the US economic security strategy. So our LG Energy Solutions is making big investment in Arizona to produce EV batteries and batteries for ESS, the energy storage system. We also have Samsung Electronics expanding their business in Texas. And we have a group of Hyundai Motor Group and other related firms making big investments in Georgia and Alabama. Also, we have other investments happening in Michigan and in this line. So I just wanted to give some numbers as well. So I can claim that we have a large investment, but we don't know how much we are really investing in the US. I just brought up three sectors: semiconductors, EV batteries, and biomanufacturing. If I give you a quick quiz, if you just pick one country that's really, really important to the next 10 years of US foreign direct investment, the answer should be Korea. And I can say for sure, for the semiconductor industry, the total investments that we track so far is about $393 billion US. Korea has about 11% share out of that number. And for the EV batteries, Korea really has a prominent role. Out of total investment, we have about 24% share. And we are also creating a large number of jobs in the US. And actually, this is not the end of the story, because I didn't count the clean energy production sector. When you build a factory in the US, the large amount of clean energy production companies that is associated with those investments. So if you draw a 100 kilometers radius in the Samsung Electronics fab in Texas, we are trying to, so we are building about 10 gigawatts of energy production capacity in the next 10 years. So there are much more to follow than this number. So I can end my presentation here, but let me give you some more details about breaking down the supply chain and what the Korea and other countries doing in the US. So if you go from the upstream to downstream, we can classify semiconductor industry like this. Korea has some share in the materials business. We have SK Siltron CSS, which is making their wafers for power electronics. And also we have Samsung doing their wafer fabrication business in Texas. So this number is $40 billion. It depends on the source. Some people say $45 billion. The White House says investment size about $40 billion, but I respect the numbers from the White House. And also we have SK Hynix planning their HBM packaging business in Indiana as well. And also we can try to track the supply chain across EV and battery businesses. So our largest amount of investments are poured into cell manufacturing by our three notable firms, SK On, LG Energy Solutions, Samsung SDI. But that's not the end of the story, because the all of the firms that is making battery components, materials should follow this trend as well, support this cell manufacturing. As a result, we also have some share, the materials business as well. And for the EV sector, we are making large investment for the assembly by Hyundai Motor Group. And also, same story, it's not just about the Hyundai Motor Group. Every other firms should follow as well, like Hankook Tire, Lotte Aluminum, and also Hyundai Mobis are making large amount of investment in the US. Coming soon. In the biomanufacturing sector, we are not having really like large share. US is already leading this industry. Like top 10 firms are mainly dominated by US firms. So small room left for foreign firms. But we have some competitiveness in the manufacturing sector, the CDMO, the contract development and manufacturing organization. We have Lotte Biologics, Samsung Biologics, Therapeutics, Wundt Bio. So they are making some amount of investments in the US as well. Okay, so this was mainly on this was mainly advertisation of Korean investment in the US. I just want to point out some challenges and implications of these investments. Challenges, I think the number one challenge for our firms is the policy uncertainties. I think this is posing biggest risk for Korean firms in these days. You know, when you make a factory or fab, it takes about like at least 5 years or 10 years. So it's very difficult to make a profit at the early stage of the investment. We need to give them time. So you need to give them like some stabilization or a stability in the first 5 to 10 years of their investment. But we don't know what the policy environment will be in the US. So that's a really big risk. So let me give you some few examples here, like CHIPS grants or in the PNT phase. So it's like preliminary memorandum of terms. So it's non-binding. So we still have uncertainties remain, depending on the big election coming soon. And also there is some likelihood of rescinding critical parts of IRA. Some people say that it won't happen. Why? Because mainly the investments are made in the Republican states, but we don't know for sure. Because we had a Limit Save and Grow Act of 2023 led by Republicans that actually passed the House. It couldn't pass the Senate, but it did pass the House. So depending on the election results in November, maybe similar acts can be introduced in the Congress and really rescind or abolish some of the critical parts of the IRA. So that's another uncertainty that we should face. And whatever administration we face from 2025, we do expect some expansion of the semiconductor export controls. Maybe the guardrail provision of the CHIPS Act can be also tightened. So our future is in the US, but we still have some fabs in China. Those operations can be affected as well if the CHIPS guardrail become tightened. And aggravating this issue is that there are unknown unknowns, which means that I don't know what I don't know. Okay? So depending on the election results, I know that the candidate, Trump, is a really smart person and really creative. So I don't know what he might suggest as a new agenda. So that is creating this issue of unknown unknowns as well. So what should we do? So we should we should be in like two extreme cases. Either we reduce our cooperation with US because of these uncertainties, or we should make a deeper connection with the US. I think the answer should be deepening our connection with the US. Why? Because if we have some joint ventures and also joint investment projects, then our problem will be also the US firm's problem as well. So I think having a deeper cooperation between Korea and the US and having some more exchange of ideas is really important. And Also, there should be some efforts coming from the government side. So we should have some alignment of our industrial policies. So if we have some alignment, then we know where we're heading to. So that can be also so that can also contribute to reduce the uncertainties that we might face in the future. Okay, so thank you so much for your attention, and I will await for the questions later.
Very, very good. I think I couldn't agree more with the last conclusion of Dr. Kim. More cooperation, because as Rob just said before us, the strengths are complementary. Some of the things that we gave away, you have today, and some other things that you don't have, we have here. So it looks only natural to me. I want to call to the podium Professor Helveston. John is a professor here at GW at the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. His expertise is in clean technologies, and also a major advantage of his for this kind of discussion is that he is fluent in Mandarin, so he actually reads the original sources on the other side, so that I hope he will give us some ideas that we have not seen yet today. John, the podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, or should I use this? Better? For folks who might be listening online. So I'm going to have to keep my comments short. I have a class that starts in about 50 minutes. So sadly, the timing didn't work out where I'm not going to be able to stick around and do Q&A, but I know I have to teach. Responsibilities, sorry. So I'll keep my comments mostly short. I'm gonna talk. I think they'll be sort of supplementary to, like, I think a lot of what Rob said. I think I agree a lot with a lot of the latter portions of what he was talking about, of what we should do, the response we should do next. I want to critique a little bit some of the framing, I think, about that, basically how China became a leader in clean energy technologies like batteries, solar panels, EVs, is that they just stole and cheated their whole way there. So I don't think that's quite correct. I mean, I think there is a lot of that for sure. But I also think it kind of absolves us of lack of investment, for one, that we didn't have much going on while they were investing. That's one big part. And also omits a lot of the R&D that's happened in China, and a particular type of R&D, R&D focused on production and cost out innovation. So finding ways to move down the learning curve and rapidly reduce costs. Okay, so learning curves are a thing that are out there in manufacturing, and Chinese firms are some of the best in the world at specifically some of these technologies. So I'm focusing on those clean energy technologies, solar, batteries, EVs, maybe wind even. That's where most of my work is. So this may not, pertain to other industries like semiconductors, where things are a little different. But I'll make the point that, some of the early, basically all of those technologies that I just mentioned were created here. I mean, they were originally invented outside of China or largely in the US. But a lot of times when those technologies were founded, there wasn't a market for that product yet. The product was very, very expensive. It was still sort of an idea in a lab. It might have a patent, but it didn't have a place to go. It wasn't commercialized. It wasn't a commercialized product. And its competitor was usually a fossil fuel product, something that is heavily subsidized and very cheap, right? So an EV, the competitor to an EV today is not another EV, it's a gas car. That's who you're trying to beat. And that's very hard to compete with. It's a really high performing technology. It happens to have this really big problem of pollution that is warming the planet and making it less habitable for us. So that tends to be something we leave out, right? But investing in batteries and moving down the cost curve to get to a point where we have cheap batteries, that's what makes them revolutionary. All right, so the fact that we had a lithium-ion battery that was developed in the 80s is something, it's sort of meaningless if it doesn't have a path to commercialization. And I think we've largely not focused enough on that in the US, right? So this is my big critique of the US innovation system, is we're extraordinarily good at coming up with cutting edge technologies and less good at bringing them to market. And we have at least been so in the last 30 years or so now. We weren't always not great at that, as Rob mentioned. Like we used to have a time where we kind of did focus on, and we ramped up and focused on production and moving cost out. But that has shifted. Basically in my lifetime, I think for sure, the cost out innovation has focused in China, and that's what they do extremely well. So if I were to make a prediction about where's the next generation battery that's going to come out, the battery is going to be twice as efficient or have double the energy density of the current generation. I would not predict China. I would predict maybe a US lab, maybe South Korea, right? Probably a Samsung. But who's going to bring the cost down to make it competitive with a gas car? China is exceptionally good at that, and that's really what we're competing against. Of course, they have huge incentives from the government, right? So getting 80% of your or 88% of your factory subsidized by the government certainly makes it easier to move down that cost curve. But that's just the initial cost. It doesn't bring you down an exponential cost decline. That happens through R&D, right? Specifically production R&D, focusing on automation, robotics, getting labor out of the factory and having factories largely automated, having very, very low defect rates, right? I mean, 99% yield rates. That's what they're good at, all right? And that doesn't happen overnight. That's happened for 20 years. So I think there's more to the story. I think China has heavily subsidized, and I think they've, again, within these industries, right, these new industries, they've heavily subsidized, but they've also had mostly private companies that have been successful here. Not the state-owned ones have largely wasted those resources. But the BYDs out there, who've been around since 2003, making cars for 20 years now, they've learned a thing or two about how to make low cost and get costs out of their production processes. So I think there's a lot of learning that has to be done. So that's just something I wanted to kind of provide a little more context on the challenges we face in trying to decarbonize our economies and get these new technologies out here. Yes, we're competing with Chinese firms, but we now have like a totally new opportunity. I think we have a chance to kind of reset the clock here. We finally have gotten the attention of the federal government here to say, hey, these are important, and you should not just invest in the upstream R&D, but you should invest in manufacturing. So the IRA bill kind of does that, right? It puts a lot of incentives at investing in manufacturing. It is also trying to create this crowd-in effect of getting private companies to come in and invest in manufacturing. So I think all of those are things that are needed. And my hope, especially with the U.S. and Korean relationship, is that when a brand new technology comes out that is truly a leap forward, like a solid-state battery that I recently heard about coming out of Samsung, something that is supposedly twice as energy dense as a lithium iron phosphate battery, that technology is brought to a plant here and commercialized here, and that we have an agreement and say, hey, we're gonna work on not just commercializing here, but also putting more R&D on the production line to find ways to get cost out, okay? So that this thing is competitive with the batteries coming out of China. If we can get to that point, then we won't need the tariffs, right? We don't need tariffs to keep Chinese batteries out because our batteries here will be better and cheaper. But if they're not, then it's going to be very hard to compete, right? So those dynamics that Rob talked about how Chinese firms are continuing to move their costs down and they're also continuing to move the technology up, that is the competition you're facing. That's not fake. That's real, and that's happening, and it is happening with the support of China's government. That if we don't respond in turn, then yeah, we're probably not going to be very competitive in those technologies. So that's kind of the main thing I wanted to talk about. Is I think we do have a really promising future right now, but we have to take advantage of it. And I am currently quite concerned that we're not recognizing how serious the opportunity is right now. Like the next 5 years is so critical. We've already hearing about Ford is pulling back its investments in EVs. Why? What are we doing here? I mean, you have a shot to invest in EVs and transform the industry and move forward and create new batteries, new technologies, new vehicles that are competitive with Chinese ones, or go back to heavy, profitable, large SUVs that are gas powered, right? If we keep focusing on the next quarter, we're going to keep doing that. If we're focusing on the next decade, then we're going to have battery electric cars that are competitive globally. And that last part, I think, is the other thing that we really should think about is we're losing global markets here. The automotive market is global, right? GM has cars all over the world, and developing countries are now looking to China for their cheap EVs, right? So if you're a developing country and you want to, put cars on your road and move up, it's going to be increasingly more cost effective for you to buy a Chinese EV than a US gas powered car. So if we don't get serious about this and start, really transforming our whole industry to a cleaner one, I'm afraid we're not going to have automakers here that have a global presence. They'll be rendered, just to a North American presence only. So the stakes are real, and I think the U.S.-Korea relationship here is absolutely like the critical one, right? You look at who's leading in the U.S., it's Kia and Hyundai, right? Outside of Tesla, they're the top EV sellers right now. So we've really got to stay focused on this, and my hope is that whoever wins the election, that this focus remains, because as was just pointed out, most of those investments are going into red states. So even though the Congress, may bulk up certain things, local level governors who in red states are going to embrace this money that's coming to their state to hire people and build factories there. So I hope there's some robustness there to keep things bipartisan. All right, I have to run a class. Thanks, everyone. Sorry I can't chat.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. One of my closest professional friends actually is Bill Bonvillian. And Bill goes around preaching manufacturing and advanced manufacturing to the United States, right? I strongly recommend that you read some of the things that he writes, because they connect very well with what John just said. So we are moving quickly to our third couple of speakers, and hopefully they will keep their comments fairly short, fairly on time, so that we can get a few questions from the audience. And the first is Dr. Ryu Si-hee. He is from the Korean Security Agency of Trade and Industry. I love this, Korean Security Agency of Trade and Industry. Maybe the next administration here will create something like this. It sounds nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to have this great chance to explain my topic, national security implications of the dual-use technologies. Well, for me, I work for KOSTI, and as a Korean delegation, I've been participating in Bolsonaro expert groups meetings since 2011. So it has become 13 years of control list negotiation between 42 countries. From my experience, I'd like to briefly summarize this topic. So this is the overview of my presentation. The first one is features of future technology. So as you see, as technologies develops, now there are many possible developments in the future. Some of them are in the range of plausible or preferable, and the wide scope is possible. So how to control the technology is the key. And the characteristic of current technology is multiple combinations of different technologies. So depending on human intentions and mental models, there are many various applications. So this is very critical moment to think about the future of technology areas. So Bolsonaro arrangement is predicting a probable range of technology in terms of application. Most promising emerging technologies are supercomputing, quantum computing, or AI, etc. However, by controlling the direction of technology, we'd like to limit the application area within the scope, which does not bring serious problem in the world. So that is the concept of Bolsonaro arrangement technology, expert groups meetings discussion. And in the year of 2018, the US introduced emerging and foundational technologies according to certain criteria. So that is adopted criteria from ICRA. And there are 14 emerging technology list, mostly same as the items discussed in Bolsonaro arrangement, and also many main countries in the world. And this slide is talking about emerging military technologies. Last year, I had a chance to visit London for defense exhibition event called DSEI. And there were many Chinese manufacturers showing their product, having electronic warfare, equipment capability. So this is calculate the censored military resources and find optimal change of their resources to efficiently face the defense or try attack to enemies. So in order to introduce such electronic warfare equipment or this type of battle, it requires supercomputer or AI computer. So that's why the semiconductor chips and other related technologies become important. And this is another example of Chinese military technology. So using 3D printer, they printed a bearing part of stealth jet or H-20 bomber, stealth bomber. So 3D printer has drawbacks. It is lacking material strength after manufacturing. However, China developed new technology to solve such a defect from 3D printing. And there is a military robot having multiple legs. So this is a new challenge in military technology. So semiconductors are the building blocks of a modern society. And by doing the role of brain and memory for every weapon, it makes smart weapon. So it is quite important. So that's why US consider advanced logic chip and also a memory chip are the target for export control. If we look into the technology advancement in semiconductor chips, then from transistor minimization perspective, it starts from 32 nanometer with planar two-dimensional structure. And now we introduced 14 nanometer of 3D dimension, such as FinFET, and also 3 nanometer scale, so-called gate-all-around field effective transistor. However, there is a limitation of narrowing down the chip scale. So now, after developing all the equipment, the best quality in each step, but finally they consider as well the advanced packaging because minimizing chip has limitation. Next level is by packaging, assembling efficiently of all those chips, so we can make better chips. By making better, in order to make better chips, there are many new equipment and technology required. One example is atomic layer deposition, because the metal which is connecting chips or outer batteries is bringing resistance. So depending on which metal is chosen, the resistance is varying. And so there are many new technology regarding with a minimum distance between transistors. And also there are interconnect requirements, that is packaging part. So if we have a GPU and HBM, then we introduce interposer to introduce 2.5 dimensional packaging. And sometimes we have chip-to-chip packaging with high pressure and high temperature environment. We can try hybrid bonding. So this is called 3D packaging, and previous one 2.5 dimensional packaging. By doing this, we can maximize the capacity of each chip. So this is considered as the modern technology. I will skip this slide. So I mainly describe the semiconductor technology. However, in the history, non-proliferation has a long history, mostly regarding weapons of mass destruction. So we have multilateral export control regimes to achieve non-proliferation of biological or chemical weapons or missile and nuclear weapons. And Bolsonaro arrangements was conventional arms and dual use list for those. So they have membership countries, introducing consensus for their target of control. So, for example, if Libya they try to get centrifuge component for getting uranium-235, then they get technology or components from Pakistan network previously. So that is there are front company and brokers. So that is conventional way of blocking the proliferation of WMD technology. So maybe many of you are quite familiar with this nuclear and missile technology. But what I'd like to show today is that the North Korean technology. So there are erector chassis and many payload or warhead, which has nuclear bombs. So it is being developed and it is located here. This is a re-entry vehicle. So from the material of graphite and new type of warhead becomes a threat globally and regionally. So that's why we need to continue the Bolsonaro and other WMD-related export control regimes. This is a real example of the application of North Korea in terms of chemical weapon. So Bolsonaro arrangement is dealing with all industrial sectors using 9 categories. And there are munitions list describing each weapons. So this is a combination of technology. However, basic frame is munitions list and dual use list. So all the emerging technology and foundational technology are covered mostly by Bolsonaro arrangement. This is an example of munitions list. I'd like to explain the trade security definition. So as previously speakers repeated, this is a war. So traditional war is dealing with military security by weapons between enemy states. However, trade war or economic war is in front of us by using some how can I say, the exclusive items or technologies. So this is a new type of war. So in this perspectives, trade security became a very important agenda. In China, more than 2 decades ago, they set up critical technology or choke point list. The first item was lithography equipment. So this is crucial equipment for semiconductor manufacturing. However, current status of China is 28 nanometer, but we are dealing with a 3 nanometer as in previous slide. So China from lithographic equipment, operating system or aircraft engine, so they have lots of technologies to develop by themselves. This is the same as other countries. So US introduced many, executive order to block US chip technologies delivered to China. So there are many, histories related to this. So in Korea, we have an export to license system, and we are dealing with each different applications depending on the industry area. So we introduced export classification and self-classification, and we have many reviewing criteria when we issue license. And catch-all is quite important. Let me explain using a detail. One example. So this is a centrifuge equipment for uranium-235 separation. And after calculating the equilibrium equation, after 3 pages of calculation, we calculated 250 megapascal is enough, performance in case of tensile strength to cover, certain speed, for example, 300 meter per sec. But current control list is pointing on a higher value, so not 250, but 460 or 900. So this is the defect of control list. So even certain equipment does not satisfy this condition, it can still be used to get uranium-235. So in this regards, catch-all is quite important. And in Korea, we develop very well-designed internal compliance program. So we have single A, double A, triple A, internal compliance companies. So by quality control of each company, we try to make the export control system all over the country. And there are penalties from criminal perspective and administrative perspective. So customs now connect all the process using IT system. So every step from issuing a license to sending the cargo in airport or other harbor, something. Oh, sorry. Thinking about the limitation of time, I was a little bit in a hurry. So, okay. So cargo selectivity is kind of AI algorithm to identify which items should be inspected efficiently in customs. So we are analyzing big data over 15 years or 20 years. So HS code and keyword and ECCN code, those are the, relation table among different parameters. So using these relations, we catch certain cargo and ask for license examination. So by doing this, we can efficiently catch some sensitive items. So if we see the statistics, then there are more and more different HS code items are under control. And also Incheon Customs Inspection Center or Busan Harbor Customs Center is checking items more with larger items, and also red colored area are controlled items. So this data shows very, improved control status of export control. So I briefly introduced the advancement of technology from WMD to conventional arms, even including civil sector. And also I introduced the new status of Korea domestically, how we control sensitive items. So today I explained very well. I heard very well of many presentations. So I guess from research and development and also trade till enforcement, there are many possible cooperations between US and Korea. So I hope this cooperation will continue in the future, making safer and better place in both countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker will be Tom Ramash from the Korea Economic Policy Institute. So Tom, the floor is yours. So you are standing between the discussion.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much for that. For anybody who doesn't know, he's one of the few engineers with an artificial intelligence academic background, so very ahead of his time. So it will be difficult for me to compete with that. But I'll try and give you something to think about over lunch. So I'll try to keep this to 15 minutes. If you don't know me, my name is Tom Ramage. I am an economic policy analyst at the Korea Economic Institute of America, a couple blocks away. And so we have been looking at a lot of this stuff, the national security implications of the rise of dual-use technologies, particularly as it relates to Korea, for Korea's role in high bandwidth memory technologies, semiconductor manufacturing, and others. Before I begin, I want to kind of talk about 100 years ago, maybe 120 years ago. You know, the first Wright brothers flight, I guess, was in 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And there was a saying that within 15 years of the first flight, bombs were already being attached to planes, being dropped on people, and that any new technology introduced into the world only takes about 10 to 20 years before it is weaponized or used for use in the military. So we really have to think about that when we think about how we are going to control the rise of artificial intelligence, but also semiconductors, things like that. Who will be the responsible users? How do we limit their proliferation? All of that. So Dr. Ryu gave a very good explanation of what dual-use technologies are and what some of the export controls are on them and how Korea is working to limit their proliferation. But I should just go over, as it was mentioned before, the Wassenaar arrangement, 42 countries. These are countries that are working together to limit the use of technologies for military use. This evolved out of COCOM, which was back during the Cold War, the Coordinating Committee for Communist Countries, trying to limit the use of these technologies from being used for nefarious reasons. So there are 9 categories, as it was mentioned before, well, 10 if you include 0, but within the United States, we have the Bureau of Industry and Security at the Department of Commerce, which is highly involved with giving export licenses, export waivers for some of the more advanced technologies that originate in the United States. And we work closely with countries like Korea to make sure this happens. So why is this important? Well, for anybody that's been following the Ukraine war between Ukraine and Russia, a lot of the drones that have been dropped on the battlefield have been found to have American-made semiconductors or electronic components. Even if these are legacy chips, when you put export controls on them, they still find their way into these partners. And beyond that, not partners, into these adversaries. And beyond that, artificial intelligence has been found to be used by North Korean hackers for cyber attacks and other things. So there's worries about what this could be used for, particularly as it relates to nuclear proliferation, or as I get to later, information warfare. So there's a great report that came out on this less than a year ago by Conflicts Armament Research. So they actually did a break apart of some of the components found in a downed, I guess, ballistic missile recovered in Ukraine. You can see here 75.5% of the electronic components originated in the United States. And this begs the question, how are these ending up in North Korea and what can we do to limit their use? Beyond that, North Korea is very prolific for their cyber attacks and hacking efforts, and they have entire military units devoted to this. This is not a picture of Unit 121, but it is, of course, a picture of the emphasis that they place on computer technologies. So Unit 121 is known to have a supercomputer used for cyber attacks. They used imported computers from abroad to do this. And more importantly, on March 4th, 2024, South Korea's National Intelligence Service announced that since 2023, North Korea has been targeting South Korean semiconductor companies to steal designs. So what could this be used for? I wrote a paper on this last year on North Korea's use of semiconductor technologies basically asking, are they making semiconductors on their own or are they importing them from abroad? But it's important because semiconductors for their use in artificial intelligence has profound implications for national security. To give one example, we all heard about the consternations about Huawei back in 2019 and their access to our own telecommunications infrastructure. Beyond that, there's the use of facial recognition technology in China. So we've all heard of this social credit score in China. If you owe money, if you've defaulted on your loans, if you're crossing the street, they'll pick up your face and it'll display your age and gender, hometown, and all of that to track people and monitor people. Now, this has also profound implications for their use on training it on the Uyghur ethnic minorities in Xinjiang province in China. And these 4 companies have been involved in providing facial recognition technology that has been used in other countries. So these Chinese companies have signed a lot of contracts with public security services in many African countries to install mass facial recognition programs. So the more advanced stages of this is going to require advanced chips, and this is just one of many uses as to why the United States would like to limit these chips from going abroad. In Russia's case, they have something called the Internet Research Agency. I think it is now defunct. They've changed their name, but this is essentially troll armies. Anybody who's watched a YouTube video or gone on any public forum in the past few years, you can kind of sense that there's a new Cold War going on the internet. There's something called the dead internet theory, where a large proportion of comments on the internet are thought to be made by bots. In China's case, there's something called Wu Mao, which are 50-cent army, meaning they get paid 50 cents every time they write a pro-Communist Party comment. And this is important. I show the Overton window here because in Russia's case, there's a book written by Thomas Rid at Johns Hopkins University SAIS called The History of Disinformation, Active Measures. Since the Cold War, Russia has been very involved in destabilizing other countries by promoting racism or anti-Semitism, other things like that, that they view as bifurcating forces in a society. They take advantage of democracies, they drive a wedge in, and now they can do this on the internet by making propaganda, making comments. How does this relate to advanced technologies? Well, artificial intelligence is now used to deploy mass bot armies, and this can be individually tailored for people based on data that whatever bot army has about them. There's a great documentary called The Social Dilemma, which kind of explains what this is doing to society, not the bots, but rather just social media in itself, which has all of our data as it relates to artificial intelligence. Think TikTok, for example. So this was the US in 2003, the median political opinions, and this was it in 2017. And I can only imagine what it would be today. And this is exacerbated by the fact that artificial intelligence is now being used against domestic civilians, so to speak. So we want to limit these example items from going to so-called maybe draconian powers or people that are not like-minded. And in this case, this is advanced GPUs, electronic design automation so that they can't design semiconductors on their own using American technology or Korean technology for that matter, and lithography equipment. Now, ASML is a Dutch company. NVIDIA, as we know, is based in the United States. But even with the October 7th export controls, these chips are still finding their way to places we don't want them to go. There's now a tangible black market for their export abroad. So it's going to be more important than ever to coordinate with allied countries and partner countries in order to limit their proliferation. And what does this mean for Korea? So NVIDIA makes these advanced chips that go into data centers, which can do advanced wargaming applications or thermonuclear modeling. If we were in a hot war with any country, we would be worried about the use of cloud computing and data centers to essentially do all of our military calculations for another country. So where the United States exports the end product, we are reliant on Korea for the high bandwidth memory portion of computer chips. Semiconductors account for 20% of Korea's exports. Interestingly, I think over 55% of that in the past decade has gone to China. And when the United States placed these export controls initially on October 7th, 2022, something like $5 billion worth of NVIDIA orders were canceled. Similarly, with the CHIPS Act guardrails, if you were to receive investment from the CHIPS Act, there were guardrails in place that limited your ability to continue export of advanced chip making equipment to China. So this put a lot of companies that had operations both in the United States and in China in limbo. And a lot of Korean companies didn't know what to expect next, and many other countries around the world. Now, after these export controls, China kind of hit back in what we now see to be called weaponized interdependence. The 3Gs, gallium, germanium, and graphite, China restricted their export from that country. And this is important because they significantly control the entire market for those items, which are necessary not just for semiconductors, but for electric vehicle batteries in graphite's case. And if executed to its full degree, this would be way bigger than anything that happened in 2019 between Korea and Japan with the chemical restrictions that Japan placed on Korea in what was almost economic warfare in that case. But I digress. You can see here, if you look at the HS code 854232, these are Korean memory chip exports to China. Now, initially, when I made this graph, I put another line below showing memory exports to the United States, but it wasn't even comparable. China is by far the largest market for Korea's memory chip exports, and for a lot of other countries as well. But we see a significant drop in memory exports to China after 2023. Now, when China banned Micron from Micron is a US semiconductor company. When they banned them from going into critical government infrastructure, Samsung and SK Hynix, their stock prices shot up because that is a huge market opportunity for Korean companies. The economic world order is essentially being bifurcated into two different camps. Do you choose to do business in China? Do you choose to do business in the United States? But as we saw in the other sessions, there's a danger to doing business in China because of what it might possibly be used for. And outside of the US government's control are the technologies, the electronic design automation, and the language architecture to create these computer chips. RISC-V is one huge example of this. RISC-V was originally developed in the United States, but in 2019, out of fears about what export controls would mean for their company, or not company, but their technology, they moved to Switzerland, where they would be more isolated from the effects of great power rivalry. And this is an important factor to take in mind when we think about what is the world going to look like as these technologies kind of separate between two camps. Now, I read a paper by Paul Triolo, I think it was written in American Affairs, so don't quote me on that, but one externality of this is that by limiting the export of semiconductors to China, you are in effect encouraging them to develop their semiconductor industry in a way that might not have been as rapid as before. So we do need to think about that and how far away they are from reaching sub 14 nanometer transistor scale, things like that, and possibly surpassing the United States or Korea in these technologies. But for now, you know, ASML, they control something like 95% of the lithography market for EUV, extreme ultraviolet lithography. So long as we work within these frameworks, it's more important than ever for partner countries to collaborate. But there's more that can be done. The United States has been blocking the appellate body to the World Trade Organization for a while now. I'm not sure what the latest update is, but similarly with the United Nations, the panel of experts on North Korea was vetoed by Russia, and there you go, it's gone, right? So we see almost a slowing down of these larger organizations where we could coordinate these export controls. And we are finding that the smaller, more agile outfits like the G7 or the nascent CHIPS 4, inchoate CHIPS 4, these may be the places to coordinate export controls between partner countries. But we have to consider the countries that have these advanced technologies, such as Korea. SK Hynix alone, they have 70% of the market for high bandwidth memory chips, which is going into NVIDIA. So if you're going to incorporate these export controls into a body of countries where everybody can collaborate together, the G7 might be the best place to do it if we can expand it. Similarly, working more with the CHIPS 4 and others. I know that was a lot, and I hope you all can get to lunch. So here are my sources. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Okay. There you have it. We can have a discussion here. My concern is about this coordination between countries, Tom. Other speakers also talked about this. I grew up in an era of globalization, and all my life I was preaching about that. And as I said 2 years ago in a meeting in Seoul, actually, a very interesting conference in Seoul, I'm not about to go and say to change on the other side and say let's control everything now and we will be safer. So I am troubled by this. I'm troubled by notions of technology sovereignty, as many people go around preaching. So I think this gives us a lot of ground for discussion. And I would like to see some lively discussion here, not boring, lively. Let's make it lively. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Oh Jun. I'm former South Korean ambassador to the United Nations. And as it happens, 20 years ago, I served as chair of MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime. So I have a question to the last pair of presenters who talked about export control. I keep asking this question to experts these days because my knowledge of missiles are a little outdated. It's 20 years ago. As we all know, missiles are very important for nuclear weapon capability because countries like US or Russia have top-class bombers, bomber airplanes, so they can fly high, fly fast, and have a stealth function. But most other countries don't have that. So if they want to use their nuclear bombs, they have to be able to mount them on missiles, ballistic missiles. So 20 years ago, North Korea had not yet conducted their first round of nuclear bomb test. So there was no question about their capability. But now, North Korea's last nuclear bomb test was 2017. And after that, they have conducted numerous missile tests, too many to count. They are doing that every year. And I am wondering whether North Koreans by now have kind of capability to make their nuclear bombs small and light enough to mount them on a short-range missile. Short-range missile meaning flying less than 500 kilometers, because it's very difficult. Uranium and other nuclear materials are very heavy. So to make them small is very difficult. Even 20 years ago, when I was talking to American experts, they said probably only Russians and Americans have that kind of capability. No other nuclear weapon state have the capability to put their nuclear bombs on short-range missiles. They might be able to do that on mid-range missiles or long-range missiles, not short-range. Short-range missiles are very important on the Korean Peninsula because the Korean Peninsula is a very small place. If it flies 300 kilometers, the missile itself is very small. So producing nuclear bomb small and light enough to put them on is very difficult. I ask these questions these days and I get divided answers. Some people think they must have got it because they have conducted so many tests. Some other people think, no, not yet. What is your take? Mr. Ramage and Dr. Jun.
Tom, you want to take that question?
So the question is kind of, how is North Korea able to put these short-range missiles, or especially with the bomb use case? But is this in relation to their access to chips and semiconductors, perhaps?
I don't think it has to do with semiconductors, but whether or not they can produce nuclear bomb small and light enough, which is not easy.
Well, what I can say as far as that goes, so I don't know anything about their nuclear proliferation capabilities, but we know that what is scary about artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, even, for example, or whatever else might come out from that, is if you were a power like North Korea, you could ask it how to make a nuclear weapon, or worse, I have even heard that if you were to feed it genetic data, for example, or biological data, it can kind of be tailored for chemical warfare purposes. But in the case of short range or long range missiles, what I will say is that even their access to legacy chips, so chips from the 1990s, chips that you would find in a washing machine, is enough for the guidance systems on short or medium range missiles. And that was one of the reasons why the Russians were pulling semiconductors out of washing machines that they found in Ukraine, because even chips from 30 years ago are enough for those capabilities. But so it would be impossible to restrict that at that point. But what we can possibly restrict are the chips that would go into advanced GPUs used in data centers for cloud computing. But I'd be most worried about North Korea's use of artificial intelligence to design nuclear weapons, and what information it would give them.
Thank you. Thank you. It is very difficult question, very professional level question. So I need to make a consultation with the NIS before answering. So I heard that there is a cooperation between North Korea and Russia, especially in terms of submarine missile technology part. But I think the range or warhead technology, making it short range, and also how they making how they want to the trajectory goes with a certain amount of explosive power. That is a very critical technology. So it is not I cannot answer at this moment how accurately they achieved their technology level at this moment. But I think North Korea continue with their allies, for example, China and Russia, but mostly Russia is in cooperation with North Korea in developing their technology. But for more accurate answer, I need to do more research with the other special team. But thank you for it's beyond my capability to answer. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a difficult question. Anybody else? Where is it? Yes, yes, like that.
In 1812, the United States declared war on Britain. We were fed up with the Orders in Council, Britain's attempt to use economic coercion against us during the Napoleonic Wars. So my question, if we could do it to Britain, why couldn't China do it to us?
Do you want to direct your question to somebody specifically? Europe.
Yes. How can I say? Who knows? It can be. Yes, it's possible. Yeah, just focus on the technological, the hegemony race. As I mentioned earlier, that it was China actually started, initiated the kind of a competition against U.S. So not only technology, but also some other measures that I think China can select if it is really urgent. So yes, why not? And I think at this moment, the US is considers to think about every kind of possibility that what kind of measures China can utilize against the US if things are a little bit more serious in terms of the Chinese kind of a position, I think. So yes, it's possible, but I think it's not easy to do that for the China, I think.
Maybe the answer is in what Rob Atkinson said, that the question is who will hurt more, who will be hurt more. Both sides will be hurt, but who will hurt more than the two? But definitely they could. Do we have any other question in the room?
One question.
Yeah.
There are concerns from industry that by strengthening the export control or sanctions against China and Chinese companies, but isn't it making them the opportunity to strengthen their own manufacturing capability by this economic sanction? So we are raising this question to U.S. Policymakers that are you sure that this approach is better to defeat China's technology battle with the Western countries? So in some sense, by giving these obstacles, I mean sanctions or export controls, they do have no other choice but to use their own equipment and technology. So this is circulating with a higher speed, acceleration, feedback. So isn't it making them advance with a higher speed than just leaving as it is? So that is the question. Thank you very much.
Any one of you wants to take this? I have an opinion, but I wonder if others want to take this question. Well, my opinion is that export controls can never succeed in the long term. Export controls is a shock therapy. So you have a problem and you apply export controls, not for the long term, but right now, to achieve something right now. If you use them long term and in many different fronts, they lose their effectiveness. So Russia is becoming much stronger. As you know, Russia has succeeded actually to circumvent most of the export controls. They have a much better industry today than they used to have 5-6 years ago. China is doing the same. There was a big story about Huawei, right? So Huawei at the beginning, when this happened, it was shocked, but now it has recovered, right? So export controls is not what a good number of people in this town believe. In the long term, they're self-defeating. That's my opinion. Anybody else? Yes, I see a hand. He is not, sorry, he is not here. The what? Would it be okay if I just No, no, that's fine. Give us a question. Mr. Atkinson earlier when he was talking about Chinese industrial how a lot of times the U.S. was investing. My question is, with these newfound CHIPS Act related partnerships with the U.S., especially in regards to the alliance, would there be a chance, even if
interests align, whether it's with perhaps.
You want an honest answer? The answer is absolutely yes. Intelligence is intelligence, but the way you use intelligence may be different. So I'm sure there will be a gathering of intelligence about your partners, but the way you use it is different. But I do not know. I'm not a political scientist. I don't know. I mean, if there are political science in the room, they can tell us better. I'm a simple economist here. Okay. Anything else? Questions? Are we all very tired? Yes. And very hungry? Yes. Okay, we can close then the session here. I want to thank Professor Yu. Thank you very, very much for giving us this opportunity. I think we had excellent speakers here. I want to thank the organizers and the Institute here at the Elliott School. We go for lunch, and in the afternoon, there is another great session. I hope all of you will come back, because it's a huge question that has to do with North Korea, right? And what we do with North Korea. Thank you very, very much for this marathon session here in the morning. Thank you. Bye-bye.